Good morning to you all, and my name is Aida Araissi, and on behalf of the Bilateral Chamber, I am very pleased to welcome you all today. I know you all have very busy schedules, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come. As I look around, I think that I'll just take a moment to give you a very brief one sentence about the Bilateral Chamber. So we're a nonprofit organization made up of energy and other sector leaders, global leaders from all over the world, and we provide platforms like today for companies to announce a technology or perhaps discuss a new strategic vision, and we invite stakeholders so that everybody has an opportunity to get to know each other, discuss things off the record or sometimes on the record. So that's what we do, and we produce these types of forums all over the world. And it can be over about any kind of country. We are we execute the U.S. Trade Administration's National Gas Initiative reverse trade missions. So we've brought delegations from China and India and Turkey, and we also do other sectors that you probably aren't interested in today. But so we're very pleased to be here. Now, the chairman of our organization was supposed to brief you today and was supposed to MC, so I am taking his spot. But if you'll indulge me a bit, he is in Tokyo, Japan with the head of the U.S. Trade Administration on such a project that I referred to earlier, but I have a few remarks that he would like for me to convey. So his name is David Phillips, and these are his words. And he just wanted to say, I just want to take a minute to underscore the critical importance and proven value of JET's technologies in and to the U.S. market. If I may take a moment, let me weigh in with an important note of support based on firsthand experience and my own observations. The largest oil and gas company in the world, Saudi Aramco, is one of the two founding members of our global organization 21 years ago, along with ExxonMobil. At the request of Saudi Aramco's leadership, and in part the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company's leadership, I participated last January in a high-level Saudi Aramco technical tour for due diligence visit to certain petrochemical, refinery, and power facilities dispersed across China, where JET's unique technology enjoys a countrywide 85% footprint with over 300 applications. This 10-day due diligence trip was an eye-opening experience and made me a true believer in JET technology. As a former CEO of one of the world's largest gas and electric utilities in the U.S., I know a thing or two about the downstream energy business, not to mention being a global transaction lawyer. I understand the critical need for deep due diligence. I was afforded throughout my trip through China unbridled authority to ask unlimited questions, technical or otherwise, of JET and non-JET personnel across half a dozen facilities which do employ JET technology. The answers were unanimous in JET's favor. Not a dissent or a regret found. Aramco was highly impressed and in fact are moving forward today in their continued due diligence effort. And as you all know, the Crown Prince recently announced new, more stringent environmental regulations for the kingdom that Saudi Aramco now will be needing to address. And so this technology not only addresses that, but is introducing a new revenue stream. Those discussions are ongoing. I know other U.S.-based executives from the U.S. utilities, the National Gas Association, and many people here today have participated in similar due diligence exercises in China. And I am sure that you'll hear directly about their sentiments. And I know that you will probably agree with our sentiments that you'll find Chairman Xu and his team, which will be presenting as well today, that they are open, fully transparent, will take your questions and answers, and hopefully you'll all find it to be a very informative session. I wish you a very good morning and a good day. So those were David Phillips's words. I will tell you that I have a stack this big of bios of everybody that's going to be speaking today, but I have made an executive decision in the interest of time that I'm not going to be reading through those bios, that I'm going to just introduce each person, and every one of you that is here today is very impressive, but I think that I'll let your words speak for themselves. You have the interpretation equipment in front of you. Number 1 is for English. Number 2 is for Chinese. I think the chairman will be speaking in Chinese, otherwise you won't need it. I have to tell you to kindly leave them in the room at the end of the session. We will adjourn to lunch in another room, and there's some courtesies, gifts from China for those of you that wish to partake, and I know some others will be leaving. So that's the housekeeping. Without much further delay, may I ask our first keynote, Ms. Deborah Byers, the America's Industry Leader and U.S. Energy Leader for Ernst Young, to please join the podium, and she'll be giving a U.S. market conditions and trends outlook.
Thank you. The most important thing is I'll try to figure out how to work the clicker. So good morning, everyone. I woke up this morning and I thought how bold it is for someone who is not a scientist, who is not an engineer, and really doesn't work in the utility business in the industry to talk about what's happening in the industry. But I'll try to give a little bit of an overview. So I'm Deborah Byers. I'm the energy leader for the Americas practice at Ernst Young. You might know us as EY, one of the big 4 firms. We have over 260,000 employees. We are a global accounting and consultancy. So let me just start. I do have some slides. Get my picture off the, and but I wanted to make a few opening remarks about what we see as sort of the macro trends. So there's really 3 things that I hear from our clients in the utility and the power sector. The customer is really the key, and that's emerged as something that is an important force, both customer and technology. And number 1, they've always wanted reliable power, especially in the US. Reliability is key. Number 2, they want it to be cheap. But what is emerging and is growing is they also want to know the source of that power, and that power is clean. And the narrative today is clean is equal to renewables. And that narrative is starting to change as we think about alternative ways to maintain clean source of energy. And a lot of this is driven by something that we have studied through surveys, and we're updating that this year around the trends with the much vaunted millennials. So we like to blame the millennials for everything. But the fact is there's 72 million millennials, and they have entered the workforce. They're now engaging in a lot of the jobs that will be making decisions. They have buying power that will start to surpass the baby boomers. So there's 78 million baby boomers, and as you know, that will continue to decline as time passes, and this 72 million millennials will start to make choices based on informed information they get from social media, the narrative they might hear from the public. So it's very important that the industry engages in this narrative and to understand what is the fuel choice and how will that impact demand. So those are the 3 big things from the EY perspective that we see emerging. So it's got to be reliable, has to be cheap, and that 3rd item, driving demand, is going to be choice of power. The other big trend that we have looked at and studied and have been sharing with the industry is we see 3 tipping points coming within the power sector. And some of that we're starting to see emerge in the near term. So when we're talking about a capital intensive industry like power and utilities, near term could be 10 years because the startup time to get capital deployed and invested. Tipping point 1 is where cost parity is achieved between distributed and centralized power generation. The second tipping point is cost parity in electric vehicles. So, and I think I would also add performance parity. The 3rd tipping point, which could change, really revolutionize what power generation looks like and the business model looks like is where the cost of power generation is cheaper than the cost of transmission and distribution. So with that kind of backdrop, where are we today, and how can we, the real question is, how can we transition both economically as well as while maintaining the three tenets I just talked about? The reliability, it's cheap, and that you allow consumers choice of power, especially choice that they understand and believe is green, is clean fuel. So those are very important, and I think this economically viable both for the industry as well as for the consumer is a key point that is not in the narrative today in the public, and is so very important that this gets discussed in great detail, and we educate the 72 million millennials who will be going to the polls, who will be voting, who will be shaping policy and driving demand. So this is just an executive summary. I only have 15 minutes, fortunately. So what is happening really on the coal fleet in particular? Weak fundamentals. This is something everyone here in this room in particular probably know better than I do, but demand has flattened for power. And that's really probably a good thing from the standpoint of the efficiency gains that we've achieved, despite the fact that population grows. One of my partners was telling me he lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's one of the, I didn't realize this, but North Carolina is one of the fastest growing regions in the country. And so you have all this population growth, and yet power demand is going down. And this weighs on the power and utility companies, and it's really a public issue. It's not an issue for the utilities because it's very important. People want to have reliable power. They want that connection, and yet demand is going down. Despite the fact that we have strong GDP growth, again, these efficiency gains, and some of those are pointed out, negative drivers are efficiency, LED lights, smart homes, better demand management have outweighed the positives driven by GDP growth and population growth. It'll be interesting to see when the 2020 census comes out and see where the population distributions are and see where power demand has grown. Secondly, this is what I refer to around the cost parity of renewables. Some of that is a little bit of hype because we still need to get scalable storage in order for this to be really explosive. But renewables costs have come down dramatically through technology improvements, and I would say that we want to be careful you don't get locked into a single source of technology, and that's something that hopefully this group will talk about in depth, because you want to make sure that you don't get into technology lock and say this is solar and wind and storage and that's what we're going to move toward, and you leave other good technologies on the table that could also provide power for generations to come. So the third, obviously very well known, I don't know that a lot of people saw it coming in the mid-2000s, is of course the shale revolution and what happened to power prices. I have a slide in the back that talks about the volatility we saw, and then all of a sudden you've got this flat line. Now, so the current conventional wisdom says that natural gas prices will stay low. I think EIA has published it out to 2030, that it's going to stay low, below $4 for until 2030. Whether that is actually realized, it's hard to say, because natural gas is a commodity, and we see what's happening with oil prices today. There are a lot of externalities that could impact that. But certainly that has taken the industry by surprise, and the drop in fuel costs and the related drop in power prices has precipitated and accelerated some of the retirements, especially when you look at a lot of the capacity payments in the recent auctions that have come out, and the realizations just haven't been there. So the economics are driving, the economic fundamentals are driving this. And then last, certainly there has been an easing of regulations, but I would say go back to the three factors, and in particular, the desire of the customer to feel that they are getting a clean source of energy. And so despite easing of regulations, the industry knows that they need to be best in class in terms of the source of power, whether it's generated from natural gas or coal. The ability to say that this is clean, we're complying not only just with the minimum in industry or minimum regulatory standards, but a standard that the industry aspires to. So I think those are more important factors than, I think Rick will talk a little bit about where this administration and their view on the regulatory scheme. But I think those are really important factors. So I'm going to zip through this a little bit. If we can set this, I think helps set the stage of what we believe are the fundamentals. This information I think you're going to send out just a summary of the number of retirements, and you can see that there's a spike in 2018. There's still retirements on the horizon, and some of them, yes, they were end of life retirements, but some of these plants can continue to operate and provide the energy mix that we need in the U.S. because the reality is, and this is something that I'm going to flip to. The reality is, coal still provides 30%. And while that's going to decline, it's not going to decline overnight. And solar and wind still only account for 8% of the power of the energy mix. And that's really important. And to make a huge leap to displace coal or displace natural gas or others, it's going to take scalable storage, and we're just not there yet. So when we talk about, even in the near term, the fact that we've reached cost parity on solar and wind does not mean we've reached the ability to scale to replace fossil fuels as a primary source of energy. So it's very important to balance these two things and think about what are all the technologies that can be deployed in order to provide reliable and as well as affordable power to the U.S. So with that, I'm going to stop because I believe we want to have plenty of time for Rick to give his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Deborah said, we'll be distributing all of the presentations. Actually, the next speaker, special remarks will be made by Phil Gonet, President of the Illinois Coal Association.
Well, thank you, and I'm just delighted to be here today. I'm smiling because most people don't know that we have the largest deposit of bituminous coal in the United States beneath the borders of the state of Illinois. Over 1 billion tons of recoverable coal. And this country used about 770 million tons last year, so the state of Illinois has enough coal to meet our country's needs for well over 100 years. This is a game changer for us in Illinois. This technology and the proposal to build and operate an FGD system that needs high sulfur coal to work. And that's one of the drawbacks, and has been the drawbacks for Illinois coal forever, is our high sulfur content. So you need an FGD system or a scrubber to meet the SO2 limits. What happened in Illinois when the SO2 emission limits came into existence in 1990, most of our power plants switched to low sulfur coal from the Powder River Basin. Our production went from 62 million tons in 1990 to 31 million tons in 2003. And worse, we lost 2/3 of our workforce. Many of those power plants in Illinois still are unscrubbed. So this technology represents a huge, huge, huge advantage for us in Illinois to increase our coal production and to be responsible for providing low-cost energy, which is vital to this nation's economy. One of the things we have going in Illinois right now is called an FGD task force. And David Repp and others from JET will be making a presentation next Wednesday in Springfield, Illinois, to the task force. The task force is to come up with ways to incentivize the use of Illinois coal in Illinois power plants. And when I met with JET and the chairman in January earlier this year, I mentioned it then, this is a game changer. The technology, the use of the byproduct for something that is critical not only in Illinois but in our country, high-grade fertilizer, and you need high sulfur coal. I said, I just won the lottery here. So I'm happy to be here. I just happened to be in Washington these 2 days, so when the meeting notice came out, I was happy to register and be part of this. But in my role as president of the Coal Association, I'm often the chief cheerleader for coal, so I'm here to cheerlead this project along. So happy to be part of it. Thanks for having me.
You guys are doing, Deborah and Bill, you did very good with timing. Proud of you. Our next speaker, if I could have Richard Westerdale, the Senior Advisor of the Bureau of Energy Resources at the U.S. Department of State. Please give us your insight.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank JET for putting on this conference and working with the Bilateral Chamber. This is an area that is very, very important to this administration. And what I'd like to do is just spend a few moments setting the stage both globally and domestically, and hopefully helping you understand how the technology that we're going to talk a little bit about today fits in with an America First energy plan. So really, to start out, we're living in a time of dramatic change in the global energy markets. The picture that many of us grew up with, one of supply and demand, where OPEC countries produced, OECD countries consumed, that's been shattered. Frankly, technology, entrepreneurship, good policy, and good old-fashioned market economics, commodity prices, have radically changed the landscape of energy. You see, energy sits at this nexus between national security, economic development, and environmental responsibility. And depending on which of those lenses you look at it through, you can see energy permeates and affects all aspects of our foreign policy and our domestic policy. So we're living in an economy today where the global markets are interdependent. We've emerged from a time of energy scarcity driving much of our policy, one where it was literally a zero-sum game mentality, to a time today of energy abundance. Abundance to the point where we not only care how our friends and allies source their energy, but also all of our partners around the world. So I know many of you are wondering and have questions about the administration's energy policies and what they mean for U.S. industry and our relationships around the world. I'd like to emphasize two key things from this administration. But before I start, I'd like to quote our president as he released the National Security Strategy earlier this year. He said that, quote unquote, my administration would put first the safety, interest, and well-being of our citizens. When we talk today about this type of technology, it really does hold true to that statement. That's number one. Secondly, when we look at the America First energy plan and we talk about energy dominance, I want to clarify what that really means. What that means as the world's leading energy producer, consumer, and innovator. And so as we look more broadly at those collective energy policies, there are four cornerstones to the America First energy plan. The first is removing barriers to energy trade and development. The second is to promote U.S. energy exports, including resources, technologies, and services. The third is to ensure economic and energy security of our friends and allies and our country. And finally, the fourth is to provide access to affordable energy for all. Now, when you step back and you look at that at the surface, and as we talk a little bit later today, you'll hear how the technology we're talking about here does touch upon each and every aspect of this, and really is well aligned with our America First energy plan. But I'd also like to perhaps talk a little bit about the coal markets and some of the changes we've seen, has been alluded to by both Deborah and by Phil. And given the 1.3 billion people in the world today without access to consistent forms of energy, there's no doubt in anyone's mind, or any outlook you look at, whether it's the International Energy Agency or whether it's here domestically, our Energy Information Administration, coal will remain an important part of the global energy mix, not just domestically, but also in those countries that are developing around the world. And how we address those challenges is paramount to our success, both as a nation, both internationally and domestically. And while the expectation is that the percentage of coal used in the global energy mix will decline over the next 2 decades, the simple fact is that in absolute terms, the amount of coal that will be used is actually going to be growing in the next 2 decades. And people forget that. And so we can't ignore that. But in contrast, the U.S. sits on more than 1/5, 22% of the world's coal endowment. And yet, we produce only 9% and export less than 1% of the coal produced globally. Let me say that again. We sit on greater than 1/5 of the world's endowment. We produce only 9% of what's produced globally, and we export only 1%. Now, I'm a simple country boy from Kentucky, but that looks like a business opportunity to me. So this really does represent an opportunity for the U.S., and our challenge is how best to position American resources to compete in this global market and to ensure that there is a level playing field for U.S. companies. And folks, often, as the case of the discussions today, that boils down to simple technology and application. And so the ability of U.S. resources to compete on the global stage will be driven by logistics and finding cost-effective ways to produce our products. And so I'm excited to be here today and to learn more and to hear more about JET's technology and how that can increase the useful life of our power plants here domestically, which in turn creates new jobs and holds on to existing jobs, and really does support, and I come back to those 4 cornerstones of an America First energy plan. It helps remove some of those barriers to development and trade. It actually does allow us to promote U.S. coal resources. It is another way to ensure energy security, the stability of our grid that coal brings into the energy mix, and it does and will help to provide access to affordable energy. So it's in that framework I ask you to think about and to listen to the presentations today. And I appreciate your time, and I hope those comments are helpful.
I'm not letting you go. I'm going to keep you up here. We have a little bit of time to open up for a few Q&As. If anybody has got some questions this morning that you want to ask him about the administration, he'll answer anything.
Aida, I think on everyone's mind right now and in the news today are a lot of the issues pertaining to trade and tariffs between our countries. And I know that weighs heavily on everyone's mind as they think about embarking or looking at new technologies and new ventures. And I have to put this into perspective. And when I look at it as a continuum of where we are, you're dealing with the world's 2 largest economies that are inexplicably linked. And energy is perhaps one of the best examples of that interdependency. It is literally where disruptions, where outages in one part of the world, and let's look at global oil markets because that's a great example, but it's true of all energy markets, affect what happens and what consumers pay here domestically at home in this part of the world. And why I mention the fact that we're interdependent and interlinked is I see this as an important juncture, one where we're reaffirming those relationships and that balance of trade between our countries. But my personal view is that calmer heads will prevail and we will find an appropriate means to work through these differences. And it is the very essence of technologies that we're here to talk about today, or the energy sector, that are the perfect examples of where we're not miles apart. As a matter of fact, we're very well aligned and working together. And I think folks forget that 90% of things where we are aligned and focus on that narrow band. Please.
Any questions?
So my name is Aisha. I am from the Arab Gulf State Institute in Washington. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned at one point that the U.S. export of its coal is 1% only, and then there are 1.3 billion people around the world. They don't have access to the energy. And my question is, where do you see the market for the U.S. coal exports, especially under the reachment of the Paris Agreement, which aims to reduce the dependence on the fossil fuels, including from developing countries? Thank you.
There are three questions embedded in that, so thank you very much. First and foremost, where do I see the market? I think it's in the developing countries, primarily in the Asia Pacific, is one of the areas. To achieve that, we have to accomplish several things. One, we need a West Coast export facility. We have not been able to get that permitted, so that's an area. Right now, there are several studies that are underway looking at infrastructure improvements here domestically within the U.S. that will enable us to be more competitive internationally. Secondly, I think it's a finance issue. Going back kind of to the first question, XM and OPEC. OPEC have not been as supportive under prior administrations of coal-related finance, and I think you're going to see some changes there. But moreover, you asked a question about climate change. And people often think that the U.S.'s stance on climate has changed just simply because we have pulled out of the Paris Agreement. And I'm a student of history. And I remember back in the 80s, there was a meeting, a similar type of meeting that occurred in a small town in Japan, Kyoto. And the Kyoto Protocol was reached. And in fact, the United States was one of the few countries that was not a signatory to that agreement. Fast forward to last year and the signing of the Paris Agreement. And you look at all those countries who had achieved the Kyoto Protocol targets and who had achieved those targets without subsidies, market distortions, or trading away their carbon footprint to other areas. And in fact, the U.S. was the only country that was able to do that. What I'm trying to say here, it's the very advent of the types of technologies we're going to be talking about today and having economic fundamentals at work in the marketplace that will allow us to continue to be a leader when it comes to climate. And because we support the coal industry does not mean we do not love our globe, our earth, or our climate. So, I mean, I hope that helps.
Thank you very much for your comments today. My name is Janet Jalisi. I'm with the National Coal Council. We're an advisory group to the Secretary of Energy. We just earlier this week completed a report for the Secretary on advancing coal exports And one of the things that we identified in that report are some of the things we feel are impeding the development of coal facilities overseas, specifically items related to the Export-Import Bank, OPEC, multilateral development banks. And one of my questions is to you, sir, is this something that the State Department can engage in? Because I think if we can start developing some of these coal facilities overseas and actually get some of these coal technologies put in place, that will open some markets for U.S. coal.
Thank you. And the short answer is yes, we already do engage in those activities, both internationally and working closely with our interagency, including the Department of Energy, to make sure we're linked up through that full value chain. You point out, as I had mentioned earlier, the OPEC XM issue. Hopefully that will be resolved fairly soon in terms of finance. That's our goal. But looking here domestically, things that we can do to extend the life and reduce the emissions and again, assist the energy here also provides synergies for global exports as well. And we do have a lot of work to do infrastructure-wise, but yes, thank you. I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So now if I may ask you all to put your headsets on in anticipation of our next speaker, who I'm very pleased to give you a brief snapshot about. I'm very honored to introduce to the podium the founder and chairman of JET, Mr. Junsheng Shi. Mr. Shi is the founder of JET Environmental Protection Group, and he serves as the chairman. He is the leader and promoter of global ammonia-based desulfurization technology from research and development, maturity, to large-scale application, and is responsible for the business development and strategic planning. I think that one thing that I would like to convey to you is, as I have heard him speak in China about his motivation of founding this company and his motivation of seeing the degradation of the air quality and water quality in the village that he comes from really riveted him and motivated him to seek something that would be a better technology or a better approach, combining the need of a country that was developing as quickly as we all know has developed, but at the same time doing it in a responsible way. So he is, to that effect, he has served as the vice president of the Jiangsu Environmental Protection Industry Association and many other enterprises. JET, of course, as we've said earlier, occupies more now under his leadership an 80% share of the market in China. And he has achieved an average annual compound growth rate of 40%. So he is, I don't think that he sleeps. He works 24 hours, and and his team will tell you that. So I'm very pleased to invite him to share his vision.
Thank you。感谢今天各位来宾在很忙的工作中抽时间参加我们的这个会，感谢前面阿依达的这个对我的这个介绍，也感谢前面的几位演讲人给我们做的这个精彩演讲，然后还有对我们 JET 的一个赞誉之词，再次表示感谢。我今天参加会的各位，可能对我们公司的这个技术安法脱硫有所了解。但是我还是想说一下这个我们这个技术这个一路发展的这个历程，简单的说一下我们的发展历程，这个还有我们这个技术的这个特点，我想再耽误大家一点时间再说一下。我们是98年成立的环保研究所，当时就选择这个做环保做脱硫。当时我们做脱硫选择这个脱硫技术的时候有几种，一种是当时在美国还有在欧洲在一些发达的国家早已成熟的一个技术，就叫 这个石灰石膏法的技术，叫简称盖法脱硫。但是我们同时研究了解到这种脱硫方式，它有大量的这个废水排放，而且它用石灰来脱硫生成大量的这个石膏，这个没办法处理啊，就是有2次污染。所以我们同时还研究了当时机翼，还有克鲁伯，还有日本的恩开钢板公司这几家国际的知名公司曾经在氨法脱硫上做了一些尝试啊。我们认为这种方法，氨法脱硫的这种方法，它没有任何的2次污染，而且把这个硫的污染变废为宝，变成了一个化肥。我们觉得这种技术很好，特别好。但是当时我们作为一个中国的一个小公司，一个民营公司，没有钱引进这些技术，所以说我们就成立研究所，决定自己研发这个技术。98年就开始了，一直到现在，经过了20年，这个现在这个技术应该是说非常成熟了，非常成熟。那么从这个技术从发展到现在，经过了四代的历程。第一刚开始我们和这个我们中国的一个大学叫北京航天大学，这个一个教授合作做了第1代的脱硫技术，简易的这个氨法脱硫技术。这个脱硫技术，当时我们做出来也挺高兴的，就是说这个环保检测都满足了排放的要求。二氧化硫的脱除率很高，所以当时我们很高兴。然后做了五套装置以后，我们发现这个技术存在了重大的问题。什么问题呢？就是说我们跟天津碱厂，我们中国天津的一个碱厂签了一个合同，对方呢是一个化工企业，他要求我们提供一个这个回收率的这个根据，就是说你用氨脱硫完了以后，把硫酸铵是不是都回收了？回收率是多少？然后回来当初我们真的不知道这个回收率是多少。然后回来我们就在我们已有的装置上做检验、做实验，结果发现我们的回收率只有4%，就是说我们把氨脱硫，让这个硫和烟气里面的这个二氧化硫进行反应。这个氨和烟气的二氧化硫，它是能快速的、充分的反应的。它是反应的，它是变成了这个另一种形态，把二氧化硫变成了这个亚硫酸铵和亚硫酸氢铵这个形态。就是二氧化硫的探头是测不到，环保的二氧化硫探头是测不到的，但是呢，它变成了另一种形态，跑到天上去，没有收下来。结果我们一化验，反复的几次化验，一开始我不相信这个数据，反复的几次一化验，我们这个发现，确实只有4%，最多不超过5%回收下来，那这就是一个大问题，那么这些硫到哪去了？都跑到天上去了，变成亚硫酸铵和亚硫酸氢铵的这个形态，就是我们通俗的讲的气溶胶的形态，又到天上去了。还不但硫没有脱下来，还增加了氨的污染。所以说，我们就开始研究，继续研究。我们当时就当机立断，就停下了我们第1代技术的推广。我们当时做了5套，市场需求还是非常不错的。为什么市场需求不错呢？因为当初中国刚刚开始这个做脱硫，那么只要满足环保检测测不到，然后环保来检测的时候我们就开一下，环保不检测的时候就不开，所以说也没有经济效益的问题，也没有经济运行压力的问题。所以说当时这个技术第1代技术虽然不好，但是还很受欢迎。但是我们意识到这个技术存在的重大的问题之后，我们果断的不进行市场推广。后来我们知道了这个一台第1代氨法1台没做，然后我们又转而自己去想办法去研究，跟很多的这个大学还有研究机构合作啊。这个后来我们也找到中国的这个华东理工大学，可能在座的对中国了解的知道，华东理工大学是中国做化工是最好的一个学校啊。我们跟他们的一个教授进行合作，他们这个知道我们了解到他这个一个叫肖文德的教授，这个肖教授 他承担了我们中国的863的这个国家的一个研发计划，就是氨化脱硫。但是呢，他作为一个科研机构，他研究了氨化脱硫，但是他没有办法进行中式装置的试验。我们当时签了天津碱厂的这个合同，但是我们没有技术，他也没有试验场地，那这样双方一拍即合，用他的研究成果用到我们签订的这个装置上，当时跟他达成了一个协议。但是前提是，如果成功了，那我们将是江南环保将是一个独家的一个技术受让方，你要技术要转让给我们，技术受让方由我们来做市场，这个独家的。后来我们跟华东理工大学签了这样的一个协议。幸运的是，我们这个技术，在天津碱厂试验一次成功了，这是我们的第2代技术。当时我们成功了以后，我们的回收率一下子就从4%提高到95%，虽然这个提高的这个步子很大，提高的这个幅度很高啊，但是5%，另外5%还是跑掉了。它这个对这个数量全年的如果数量累计下来，这个5%数量也是非常可观、非常惊人的啊。所以说我们并没有满足于95%的脱硫效率，我们自己这个团队跟这个华东理工大学的团队，我们一起继续合作，完了以后就是说这个继续研究3代技术。那这样我们很快在2004年开始，我们就在这个新的一个项目上，叫扬子石化的项目上，我们把回收率就提高了98.几，98以上，然后每年逐步的提高，我们最终提高了这个99，提高到99，98.5，99。这个时候我们大概已经做了100，就是这个3代技术，我们做了2代技术、3代技术一起做了100多套。然后这个时候，我们中国的这个2009年，我们国家就是政府提出来就是说这个环保的这个标准进一步的提高，就是最高提到50毫克，就是把排放提高到50毫克。这个所以说我们很快也进行第3代的研究，我们提高的这个99，满足满足政府的新的这个排放要求。然后在一直到2014年，我们中国政府又提出来一个新的这个标准，要求二氧化硫就是排放达到35毫克，那么总层的排放达到这个20毫克，就是在20毫克的基础上，特殊地区排放限值达到5毫克，就是说脱硫后的总层要5毫克。那么以前中国政府在这个对尘排放和二氧化硫排放，它是2个不同的概念。我们中国是先除尘后脱硫，那么先上的除尘装置，它要求除尘的这个出口检测点放在这个除尘之后，脱硫之前。那么脱硫在除尘之后，那么脱硫里面的气溶胶，我想解释一下，气溶胶不光是氨法脱硫的这个专利，就是特点，也是钙法它也有大量的这个气溶胶，叫Q6，就是说Q6的排放。我们江南环保第一个向我们的我们中国中央政府的环保部门提出来，就是说提出一个总层的概念，就是我们希望我们政府把这个环保的关于尘的检测口放到最终排放到大气里面的这个烟囱的这个地方，而不是放在前面，否则你脱硫过程当中、脱硝过程中产生大量的2次污染，就是说尘又跑到天上去了。所以说中国的污染这个治了这么多年，始终没有这个太多的好转，问题很大一部分问题就出在这儿。那么自从14年 我们给政府提出了这么一个建议，然后政府采纳了我们这个建议，并且公布了它的新的检测要求、新的排放要求，比如就总成特殊地区，就像发达地区、东部发达地区，全部把总成最终的总成排5毫克。5毫克这个在座的有些是电厂的专家，那肯定知道5毫克这个概念是非常非常高的，非常高的。但是我们的技术第4代技术就达到了，同步达到了，在我们脱硫的出口层达到了5毫克以下。现在正常的一般都是2到3毫克，那二氧化硫一般的都在10毫克、15毫克左右，甚至更低。就是我们的4代技术已经完全成熟，并且这个技术指标应该说超过了目前当今全球所有的其他技术的这个技术指标。那这个我们说到，从2014年开始，我们建成了第一套4代装置的，在我们宁波的这个万华建成了第一套示范装置。这一点我们美国的很多朋友到我们的这个装置上看过。等会儿他们会给各位说他们亲眼见到的这些情况那么这就是我简单讲的，就是我们这个4代技术的这个发展的历程。在这个当中，我之所以讲这么多，在这个当中体现了江南环保作为一个负责任的一个公司的一个态度，对待市场、对待环保的一个态度，这一点非常重要。那么当我们进入国际市场、进入美国市场，我们技术成熟了以后，进入美国市场、进入全球的其他的这个市场以后，我们仍然会秉持这种对客户、对这个社会负责任的态度去做我们的认真的做我们的事情，为各位服务，为大家服务。那么现在我就再具体的讲一下我们这个技术的特点和能给客户带来的一些社会带来的一些好处。刚才各位也提到了，我们美国是一个经济体非常发达的一个国家。我们从美国我们了解到，美国从50年代、60年代，甚至早的从50年代就开始在燃煤电厂新装了脱硫装置，而我们中国是在80年代才开始装脱硫装置，甚至在90年代才装脱硫装置。那么这些脱硫装置现在都很老了，而且这个我们的煤电厂呢，大多数都服役期限都很老了，并且正如我们刚才国务院的我们的官员说的这个我们美国京都议定书是执行的最好的一个国家。所以说但是煤炭作为美国的一个曾经的支柱产业，现在是不是我不敢说。至少煤炭作为美国的曾经的一个支柱产业，就是为美国社会做了非常大的一个贡献，那么现在随着这个页岩油的开发、页岩气的开发，这个天然气的价格的下降，然后这个新能源、风能，这个还有太阳能的这个新能源的发展，还有这个环保的对全球人们对环保的这个要求，比如说京都议定书，比如说巴黎协定，比如说这个还有很多的其他的一些环保的一些国际的协定。那么在这种情况下，是不是我们曾经的煤炭作为发能源的一个支柱产业，是不是我们就很快的就是让它消失？我觉得这也是一个很大的问题，因为刚才各位都说了，我们从2014年到美国来成立分公司，然后想把我们的技术推给美国的煤电厂，那么我们也对美国的煤电厂做了一个调研和了解。这几年美国的煤电厂的退役速度是非常惊人的，这甚至引起了美国总统的这个关注，就是说希望这个减缓这样的一个退役速度，这样子就是说来这个缓解我们的这个煤炭工人的失业的这个压力，还有给有些这个煤炭大州，特别是像我们印尼若伊州的像这种煤炭大州，它的这个税收带来的一个压力。我觉得 JET 的技术，现在到美国恰逢其时，能够帮助到他们，帮助到这些煤炭的这个行业、煤电的这个行业，减缓这种 煤电的这个退役速度。因为煤电退役除了刚才说的环保的压力之外，还有一个关键的是一个经济的压力，就是说这个运行成本的压力。政府对环保的这个要求越来越高，越来越高。那么我们这个投入，就是我们电厂对环保的投入就越来越高。现在有些电厂在环保方面的投入，在光单独是在脱硫方面的投入，就占我们发电成本的10%左右，10%左右，甚至更高。大家可能以前不知道没算过这个账。我们详细的根据公开的数据，我们做了一个分析，达到10%以上，好多达到这个每千瓦，就是达到这个叫6块钱，平均达到6块钱一度电，就发一度电要达到6块钱，就很高了。所以说这么重大的这个巨大的这个成本的压力，就是环保的成本的压力，就是特别是脱硫的成本的压力，导致了这些电厂不赚钱，甚至亏损。所以别的这些煤电厂的这个所有者，希望退出这个煤电行业，转其他的这个能源来做。最近美国联邦政府又公布了一个新的法规，也是早几年公布的，但是现在要实施，要求2023年之前，美国的所有的电厂废水要零排放。电厂正常的情况下，电厂发电它是没有废水的，它水都是循环的。那电厂的这些废水哪来的呢？就是脱硫过程当中产生的这些废水，产生的这些大量的废水，这些高含盐的废水处理起来成本很高。现在就是说按照联邦政府的要求，废水零排放，那么电厂上这个水处理装置，每一个千瓦要将近100块钱，就是100美元一个千瓦，也就是说1吉瓦的这个电厂要投资1亿美金上这个废水零处理装置。所以这样的一个巨大的投资，对于现在濒临就是亏损边缘的，或者说是毛利很低的这么一个发电厂来说，是一个很重的负担。所以说很多电厂现在有选择，就是我开到2023年我就关门了，而且这个趋势现在现在已经开始准备关门了。所以说这个趋势非常明显。在座的各位有煤电的厂家的专家和还有我们煤炭应该知道，大家都知道有这么一个法规。我英文不行，我不知道这个法规的英文名词怎么说啊。那么在这种情况下 ，JET 的这个技术，前面说到它没有废水排放，它的这个废水就是电厂的这些废水都来自于脱硫装置，就是前面我们用的那个盖法脱硫装置的它产生的废水。如果把它的这个盖法脱硫改成我们的氨法脱硫，这个废水问题就解决了。投资氨法脱硫的钱和甚至比投资这废水处理装置的钱还要少。那么，但是它的好处是，不但是没有废水，它的好处是让业主的脱硫成本变成0，甚至它的成本变成负数，也就是说让它盈利。就用 JET 的技术可以帮助这些电厂在脱硫的过程当中盈利。那么我们根据我们这个技术的特点，我们针对美国市场推出了这个我们的经营模式。我们在中国做的都是 EPC 模式，就是说这个你客户给钱给我，然后我来帮你建。那在美国不是，在美国我们推出了 BOO 的模式和这个租赁这些的模式。那这样子的话，电厂在这个过程当中不需要拿1分钱，那我们来建，我们来运营这个装置，我们可以把电厂和电厂分享，我们和电厂分享给电厂节约的这个成本。那电厂在这个过程中不需要拿1分钱。这个具体的一个我们的这个经营模式，等会儿我们的CEO 会给大家详细的做一个介绍啊。那么所有的这些都是 基于氨法脱硫的一个特点。氨法脱硫的特点，第一大特点就是没有二次污染，没有废渣。我们的脱硫的副产品不是脱硫石膏，不是脱硫石膏要堆放。现在美国政府也提出来，脱硫石膏不能随意堆放，要进行填埋处理。这个也有一个法规，关于脱硫的固体废物的一个法规，也要处理，也要花很多钱。那么还有废水，我们没有废水，也没有废渣，而且刚才说了，我们的脱硫效率特别的高。我们的脱硫刚才说了那个数据，就是5毫克的尘和35毫克的这个二氧化硫。实际上我们中国的这个环保标准是35毫克，但是我们的这个技术可以达到10毫克甚至5毫克更低，那么就超过了燃气的排放标准，就是我们燃气电厂的用天然气的排放标准，就是我们这个技术可以把燃煤的这个排放标准超过燃气的排放标准那么这种情况下是不是需要煤改气呢？我觉得大家可以选择用成本来选择，你煤改气也要花很多钱那如果是我达到了燃气的排放标准，甚至超过了燃气的排放标准，那我们的这个电厂所有者，我想他应该做出一个选择，需不需要把这些燃煤电厂改成燃气的所以说这一点我们煤炭协会的肯定这个主席肯定很高兴这个这是我们完全能做到的，这个排放标准的提高，这是我们的特点。这个然后还有刚才说到了我们的经济性。现在美国的我们的副产品叫硫酸铵，就是这个二氧化硫和氨反应生成亚硫酸铵，然后我们把它强制氧化成硫酸铵，然后这个硫酸铵美国市场是非常好销的。硫酸铵在美国市场现在卖到了200到250块钱之间，美金1吨这个价格甚至超过了尿素的价格非常好销。这个而且美国的农业是大量需要这个硫酸铵的，因为在这之前，在我们氨法脱硫之前，全世界所有的硫酸铵的这个产品都是副产品，没有一家是专业生产硫酸铵的化肥的，都是副产品，都是炼油的己微酰胺的这个化工方面己微酰胺的这个副产品，这个产生的硫酸铵，但是这个产量非常小，美国一年只有300万吨的硫酸铵。但是美国的农业，我们做了研究，美国的农业真正的对硫酸铵的需求，甚至要达到1000万，超过1000万吨因为你没有硫酸铵的需求，而且这个价格很高，所以大家就选用其他的来替代。所以说，我们氨法脱硫的 JET 氨法脱硫的另外一个优点就是说，我们的副产品能够给美国的农业，或者说给全球的农业都带来一个好处，降低，因为我们的这个副产品的成本非常低，几乎是零成本那么它可以给降低这个化肥的这个价格提高农民的收入，增加粮食的产量和它的品质。硫酸铵带给农业的好处，我举个就是大家都知道的例子，比如说我们的水果如果是使用硫酸铵的水果，跟不使用硫酸铵这个化肥产生的水果，它的甜度是不一样的，它的甜度脆，这个又脆又甜，水果味道很好，用硫酸铵，特别是南方的热带的水果都是，包括烟叶，硫酸铵对多增加产量，提高它的口感的一个化肥品种非常好的一个化肥品种。所以说这个我们的技术的一个附带的一个效应，就是说化肥对农业的一个好处另外我们的这个脱硫的一个我们脱硫的技术，除了刚才讲的经济效益，我们的没有二次污染，然后我们的这个排放标准非常高，另外刚才我都说了所有的话题都说了我们在煤炭行业，我们这个技术在煤炭行业的一个给带来的一个好处但是在这之前，就是在之前几十年的过程当中， 就是没有一家脱硫公司做环保的脱硫公司，它的技术它可以就是除了在煤炭行业做，有些技术是在，比如说刚才说了盖法，它是在煤炭行业做脱硫的盖法脱硫技术，但是在炼油行业以前没有一个脱硫公司，就是说横跨一个技术横跨2个行业，就是说我的技术又可以用在煤电行业，又可以用在炼油行业。但是 JET 的这个技术的另一个特点就是可以，我们这个技术可以横跨煤炭行业和炼油行业。炼油为什么炼油行业我们这个技术也行啊？炼油行业以前用的这个技术都是这个我们石油系统的，比如说我们杜邦的技术，贝亚格的杜邦的技术，这些技术都是独立，但是这些技术也只能用于这个炼油行业。现在我们这个技术横跨2大行业。关于这个我们技术的这个特点，就是能给炼油行业、天然气的冶炼行业带来的好处。我们等会儿我们中东地区的 CEO，法瑞德先生会给大家做一个介绍。刚才我们黛布拉女士也说到，就是说这个阿美这个现在对我们这个技术的一个需要，刚才是也说到对我们的这个需要。那么我们等会儿这个就是说我们的法瑞德先生会从用阿美的这个事例，还有阿特洛克的这个事例案例来说明我们这个技术除了给煤炭带来的好处，煤炭行业这个带来的好处，还能给燃煤行业，就是炼油行业带来的一个好处。谢谢大家。
Thank you very much. For time's sake, what I'm going to do is ask our next speaker to come up, but I also would like to ask the next panel to come up and take their seats. So if I could have Mr. Brad Scott, COO of JNG US, Katherine Dombrowski, Principal Technical Staff of Trimeric Corporation, Ben Albright, former Managing Director of Zimmer Power Station-Dynergy, John Malloy, Plant Manager, Cambria Plant from Northern Star Generation. And if you could all take your seats, and while they do that, if anybody needs to refresh some coffee real quick, please do. There you are, Brad. Very good. So Katherine, maybe, yeah. And then John. Welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, I want to echo the chairman's appreciation for everyone taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. We're very excited about JET's future in the U.S., and I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about our business strategy and how we think we can bring benefit to the U.S. Coal industry. Okay. So I think if I get one point across today to everyone, it's that we want this to be a partnership. We are not just here to sell our technology. We want to partner with coal power plants within the U.S. And bring benefit to them as well as bring benefit to the company. And on this slide, just trying to highlight, what we feel a number of those benefits are. And the chairman talked about a number of these. But probably one of the biggest is if you're facing a huge ELG spend to continue to operate your power plant, that decreased capital spend. The create jobs and a needed byproduct with the fertilizer, as well as, to Phil's point, using, U.S. coal to power U.S. Power plants and keep miners employed, power plant people employed, as well as the agricultural industry as well. And, the upside is there's additional revenue that we can provide to the plant. Some plants have the benefit of selling their gypsum, but many don't. And I can tell you from personal experience is some of the ELG technologies come online that can have a detrimental impact to your gypsum production. And it may not be a saleable product anymore as you start to cycle up some of the different things that are contained in the coal. And then just an overall reduction in the plant's operating cost. In many of our markets, gas is on the margin. And if you can take $2 or $3 out of your dispatch cost, that can have a pretty profound effect on your dispatch and your capacity factors. Again, so that win-win mentality. And then lastly, as the chairman spoke extensively on, the overall emissions and the solid waste reductions. So as I start out, the point is we're not here to sell you our technology. We're here to partner with you because we bring benefit to you, and we believe you benefit as well, or we benefit as well from bringing that. And I talked about a number of these benefits already: the lower O&M costs versus the limestone scrubber, plant production costs, a lowering of your parasitic load. So, we all have concerns, and Rick, maybe we could talk about NSR someday, but, we're not changing the gross output. But if we do lower that parasitic load at the plant, that allows a higher net output, which is, again, an upside. The lower SO2 emissions, typical limestone-based scrubber, 98% is probably world-class. We believe we can exceed 99%. And that 1%, whether you're facing some kind of a SIP within your state or whatever the case may be, can be enough to meet the regulations. The fuel flexibility, again, as Phil alluded to, burning PRB in Illinois just, makes no sense. As well as the carbon impact of, transporting all that Powder River Basin coal from Wyoming to the state of Illinois, right? If we can build Illinois coal in Illinois, that just makes, logical sense. So for us, it's the ammonium sulfate. And as we talked about earlier, we need the SO2. We want the SO2, which I think is a fundamental shift from what you've heard from other scrubber manufacturers, in the past. The more, the better, because the more fertilizer we can make, and that's a lucrative product for us. And then, we've tried to be as flexible as we can. We know that there's a number of different nuances, a number of different business models in the U.S. industry right now with regards to power generation. And so we've tried to develop strategies that will allow us to tailor our relationship with each of the different power plant owners to fit their needs as well as to fit our needs. And so the three that we are really pushing are either a plant lease, where we will come in, take over complete control of the plant, lease it from the owner, run it ourselves, as well as during that period, build our FGD next to the existing one, and then bring it online and begin to realize the benefits that I've discussed. Plant acquisition is fairly straightforward. I'll talk a little bit about that one, but that's, I think, probably one that most people are familiar with, is a pure M&A process. And then I think the one that's unique, at least in my experience this is unique, is our build, own, and operate, where the power plant owner continues to run his plant, he continues to run his existing FGD, and we build our ammonia-based scrubber alongside, and then we tie it in and begin to operate it. We bear all capital costs. We bear responsibility for the distribution of the fertilizer, procurement of the ammonia. So that little island that's the scrubber would belong to JET and would be operated by JET. But obviously that's got to be a very coordinated arrangement, because when you don't run, I can't run, and vice versa. If we're not there for you, you can't run the plant. So we are very tied at the hip, so to speak, to make sure that it's a win-win. So I won't spend a lot of this. It'll be in the materials that we'll send out, but this is really just a quick case study, and just to kind of give you some numbers to understand where we see the benefit. So in this example, this is a 2-unit, 650 megawatt per unit plant, running at roughly about a 69% capacity factor. If any of you guys actually crunch the numbers that are in here, that's a 68.5% capacity factor. So if you come up with a little bit of different number, that's why. But basically, in the table, we're trying to illustrate what a typical plant, a 1,300 megawatt plant, would be spending on limestone, would be spending on power, even though typically it's just a house load. So most plants, at least in my experience, don't count that as a cost. And then your other utilities, as well as your either disposal of some gypsum or very, very thin margins of the limestone. What the ammonia column is what we would incur, right? You would not bear the cost of the ammonia. That's over in the JET cost. You forego the cost of your current limestone, And then we do have a power requirement, but it's lower than what you currently have today. And we do have steam and other utilities, primarily water and electricity. Steam, water, and electricity are basically the three utilities that we would need from the plant. So when you total those all up, you can see extremely robust cost savings of $32.2 million to the plant. And that to me, I think, is the eye opener. And you say, okay, well, why would you do that? And then if you look at the last column, that's the benefit to us, because we get to sell the ammonium sulfate at a very lucrative price, and that's where we make money. That's our business, right? And so overall, that's why we call this win-win strategy, that we both are successful. Just down in the last box briefly, that $32.2 million, that's right from the upper table. The $104 million is just an estimate of what we believe a plant of this size would need to invest to meet ELG compliance. And then your other O&M savings, because you don't have limestone prep, you don't have conveyors, you don't have gypsum storage, you don't have mobile equipment, right? We estimate that at about $6.5 million. So if you just take the FGD OPEX savings along with the ELG OPEX savings and divide that by the 6 to 8.5% capacity factor, it's roughly $4.97 per megawatt hour. So again, that's a significant number when you talk about a plant of this size, but it's also very scalable. So I'll just run through each of the models quickly, try and get back on schedule here. But on our build, own, operate, that's the BOO model that the chairman referred to. Basically, we're responsible for all EPC requirements. We would bring the equipment in, we would construct it, little to no capital invested by the owner, and then a very minimal tie-in outage. We estimate it 3 to 4 weeks. Again, it's going to be site specific. How much land do you have? How much room do you have for us to build our technology? And then we'll own and operate the FGD facility. Right now, just on information we're able to gather through some of the plants that we've signed NDA agreements with, we think somewhere around 10 years is a good starting point that allows us to recoup our investment, as well as gives the plant some certainty for 10 years. You get beyond that, a lot of plants just get a little bit uncomfortable of making that commitment beyond 10 years. And then, we'll take the responsibility for meeting the existing SO2 emission limits. We'll take over all FGD operation and maintenance costs, with the exception of those utilities that I mentioned. And then lastly, we'll handle all the ammonia procurement as well as the fertilizer sales. So the kind of the perfect plant for us, or the plant we think this would be an attractive model for, would be someone who's kind of on the bubble or mid-stack within your LMP, within your region. You're forced to burn that low sulfur coal, from the PRB for compliance. You have high FGD operating costs. Maybe you're, Ben will probably talk a little bit about if you're using lime for your FGD process. That's an extremely, high cost sorbent. You have a large ELG investment that's looming, depending either on the federal or the state regulations. Limited opportunity for gypsum sales, 10-year projected life cycle, and a robust agriculture market nearby. As we start out, that helps us, but we anticipate as we grow, that we'll be able to increase that distribution network, and that may not be as large a requirement as it would be as we first step out. Under the plant lease, again, this one is a little bit more complex. But basically, we would enter into a lease agreement to run the plant, as well as then build and operate the FGD. We would, work with the owner to understand what kind of his forward plant revenues are for the term of the lease, to compensate him for those revenues. And then, we would anticipate that within the first 2 years of operation, we'd have the FGD installed. Similar to the BOO, we would take all responsibility for the fertilizer product. We anticipate, significant cost savings, as you move from that limestone base to the ammonia-based FGD, and then some of the other, benefits that we talked about in the earlier slide. And then we would also, a portion of those cost savings would be passed back under the lease agreement to the plant owner. So, as I've talked about, we anticipate this, improves the overall economics of the plant. Some aspects of the commercial arrangement may have to remain with the owner as we begin. If he has, 3 or 4 or 5 year coal contracts, good for 5, right, Phil? Yeah. We may have to retain those coal contracts as we transition over, as well as how would we participate in the market? Do we trade through the existing membership, whether it's in PJM or SPP or MISO? We have to work through those logistics. So that may be as we go transition, not happening on day one. And then we would staff and operate the facility in a similar manner as it currently exists. Some of the folks we've talked to have raised concern over union contracts and how that would be handled, and I think we can work with the owner either through an agreement or an O&M arrangement to transition again to what we think is the optimal economics for the plant. As well as we've been asked the question, if I shut down the scrubber, that's that could be a plant 1,300 megawatts could be 50, 60 jobs, but we'll need people to run our scrubber as well. So again, working with the owner. So who would be a target for the lease opportunity? Many plant owners, as we saw on Deborah's slide, have already announced plant closures, whether they've occurred already or are coming in the future. We have the opportunity to really improve those plant economics if we can lower your dispatch cost. We can, commercially, use that time for a more integrated and timely execution. And then, if you have an owner who's uncomfortable with that 10-year commitment on the BOO, he's saying to himself, listen, I don't know if I can make it 10 years. I'm only comfortable with 3 or 4. If we can guarantee those revenues for the 10-year lease, right, that may bring him back to the table or, have him look at his plant in a different light. And as we mentioned earlier, the agricultural market. The last is the plant acquisition model. This one's fairly straightforward. Probably the only thing I will mention on this slide is, because JET, is a Chinese company, there is some requirements that we would have to work through that could be somewhat cumbersome. We don't know yet. We're just starting to have those discussions. So it's likely we would do a joint venture with a U.S.-based company to make that acquisition just go a little bit quicker and smoother. But we anticipate the benefits would be very similar to the lease model. Again, very similar to the lease model, but if there's a plant out there, we know a lot of the First Energy and the Jiangnan, as they're working through their bankruptcy process, as they emerge from that, there could be opportunities for us to work with them to take control of some of their plants, or a plant again that's been either already closed or has been announced that it's going to close. So that's my presentation. Just a quick Q&A if anybody had anything that they wanted before we move on to the panel. Okay, terrific. First up, Katherine Dombrowski.
Hi there, my name is Katherine Dombrowski. I'm an engineer with Trimeric Corporation, and this morning I'll be giving a brief summary of a technical evaluation that we performed of ammonia scrubbing for SO2 removal. Just real briefly about Trimeric Corporation, and so you can understand how we fit into this. We're a privately owned consulting firm outside of Austin, Texas, consisting of 18 chemical process engineers who specialize in traditional chemical engineering services, but also in technology evaluation and its development and deployment into the marketplace. Our customers come from a wide variety of industries, including the electric utility industry and natural gas treating. And I think what's important and germane for this discussion is that we're independent of licensed technologies and chemicals. So our owners have made a conscious decision that they like doing process engineering consulting, and they want to be unbiased advocates for their clients. So with that in mind, what we did was we were requested by a third party, not by JET, to evaluate ammonia-based scrubbing as a option for SO2 removal at an existing U.S. coal-fired power plant. At that plant, its existing scrubber was reaching its end of life and was also causing high yearly cost to operate that scrubber. And there are several advantages of an ammonia-based scrubber that our client wanted us to look at to see if that would be a potential avenue for them to look further into as an SO2 removal replacement technology. We had three main sources of data for the study that we did. One was publicly available information that was in the public domain. Another was conversations with ammonia-based scrubbing technology vendors, one of those being JET. And then finally, went on a visit to China with JET to visit three coal-fired plants that were operating JET's SO2 technology. The main focus of our study was looking at key performance criteria that would distinguish ammonia-based scrubbing for application at this U.S. plant. So first and foremost, it's got to meet the SO2 removal requirement that you need as a prerequisite. And what we were looking for is at least 98% removal of SO2. And JET supplied to us performance test data from 3 different sites, coal-fired sites, showing that their technologies were able to achieve that and more. We're also very much concerned about the production of a saleable fertilizer byproduct. It's important that the ammonium sulfate that you produce be saleable. And while I'm not a fertilizer expert and I can't talk about the fertilizer market, I am an expert on coal-fired power, having worked in it for 17 years and on scrubbing technologies. And when you think about coal, you think about all the trace contaminants that come in with the coal. And so a question that foremost comes to mind is, well, where do those contaminants, those metals, the metal oxides go? And so I did a quick calculation looking at the coal composition for the plant in question, and then estimating how much of those metals would enter into the scrubber, and then made an assumption of a worst case that all of those get incorporated into the fertilizer product. And then I had an example specification for a fertilizer product, an ammonium sulfate product. And in the case of the coal specification I looked at, the fertilizer product, I predicted that the trace contaminants would be below the maximum allowable levels for that fertilizer spec. So at least on first blush, it looks very promising from that perspective. Whether it's actually saleable on the market, needs further study, and that's a market-based decision. And that was outside the purview of my study. And then the other third key performance criteria that we were concerned with was the ability of an ammonia-based scrubber to eliminate ELG compliance concerns. So with traditional wet-based scrubbing, you often have a purge stream, and the chairman mentioned this, that has to get treated, need to be treated for wastewater compliance with the effluent limitation guidelines. And that purge stream comes about because there's chloride in the coal, and you need to limit chloride concentrations in order to prevent corrosion. Well, the advantage of an ammonia-based scrubber is that chloride then gets incorporated into the ammonium sulfate product. And so you're not generating a water stream to purge those chlorides. It's now being incorporated into the product. And so both of the vendors that we talked to, including JET, looked at the coal specifications and the unit specifications for the unit in question. And they both came to the conclusion that, yes, an ammonia-based scrubber could eliminate the ELG compliance concerns for that plant. Finally, we looked at a few other technical aspects of ammonia-based scrubbing. One would be the process availability and reliability. I was not provided any quantitative data to be able to assess this, but from both vendors, I was told that they felt that their process was as reliable or more reliable than a limestone-based scrubber. And that technology is already quite reliable these days. And in my visit to China, I talked to 3 different FGD engineers at the 3 different facilities that we visited, and each of them indicated that they were able to operate between maintenance outages, so anywhere from 6 to 24 months, without having to go offline to maintenance the ammonia-based scrubber. So that scrubber was available for them and never caused them a concern of going on an outage. That being said, with maintenance, those 3 engineers also indicated that they wish they had better materials of construction. They wish they'd had the money up front to go a little bit better for materials of construction, so that when they did take a maintenance outage, that they didn't have as much maintenance work at the time. So I think that when we translate this technology over to the U.S. market, that's something that we need to take into consideration is U.S. utilities' expectations for materials construction. We also looked briefly at ammonia handling considerations. It's important to note that large volumes of ammonia are going to be required here, and so there's logistical concerns about getting it to the plant, and then also there's federal regulations that govern the safety of that. And so some of those regulations are going to be new to some power plants because they may not have handled ammonia at the scale. And those are things that are achievable and doable, but it's just something that needs to be kept in mind when making a decision about the technology. And finally, we looked at the technology's effect on other air emissions. So you've got, that technology is there to remove SO2, but you don't want it to impede your progress in removing the other emissions that you need to remove. So in terms of CO2, it's neutral. There's no CO2 formed by the process itself, unlike limestone scrubbing. JET provided data for NOx emissions, showing that there was no negative effect on NOx emissions. For ammonia, we heard from the chairman about their challenges and how they've advanced the JET technology in order to remove ammonia emissions. And so both of the vendors I talked to were able to limit their emissions to less than 5 or 10 ppm in the stack. HCl, likewise, we have, I was provided data by one of the vendors showing over 99% HCl removal, so that's good. There are 2 areas of concern where further engineering studies are needed in order to have a good engineered system, and one would be on particulate matter. And so this relates to the aerosol issue that the chairman brought up. And he's deployed a technology that will deal with that. But it means that you have to look at each specific plant and its inlet sulfuric acid concentrations and really make sure that you're making a good engineering decision about how you deal with sulfuric acid and then its reaction within the ammonia scrubber, and making sure that you've well controlled those fine particulate emissions. And the final point I'll make is that on the mercury front, there's mercury regulations here in the US, whereas ammonia-based scrubbers, when they're deployed mostly outside of the US where there are not mercury regulations. And so right now we don't have data on the mercury behavior within the ammonia-based scrubber to make a judgment about how that's going to work. An interim solution would be to remove mercury upstream of the scrubber such that the scrubber does not come into play with meeting the mercury regulations. But I do think that having a good set of robust mercury data for the ammonia scrubber is something that's going to be needed for widespread deployment of this technology in the U.S. So in summary, we found that through all the aspects we looked at, this was a technology that was worth continuing to pursue and do a detailed engineering study on to understand how it would be deployed at the plant that we were at. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Katherine. Have your seat warm. So Ben Albright is up next. Ben was the managing director at Zimmer Power Plant, which is one of the largest single-unit plants in the U.S., over 1,300 megawatts, I believe, and has a lime-based scrubber. So Ben's going to give us his insights.
Right. So it's nice to hear Katherine's discussion because it kind of echoes very, very similar experiences that we had in our evaluation of the JET technology. As discussed, if I can make this work, there we go. I was the managing director of Zimmer Power Station for several years. It's a 1,300 megawatt site, single unit, pulverized coal, running a 50-50 blend of an Illinois basin coal, you're welcome, Phil, and Northern Appalachian coals as well. Typically running on a high-end spectrum with sulfur levels in around 5 1/4, but up to 7 pounds per million BTU at times, depending on what blend's coming in. So fairly challenging. The station was built originally with an electrostatic precipitator and a lime-based FGD system, and later retrofitted the SCR technologies for NOx control. Big important point here is that lime-based system. Zimmer came online in 1991. It's kind of on the newer end of a lot of large generators out there. Should have a lot of life in it, should be very cost effective, but the reality is those lime-based scrubbers are very expensive to operate. That lime-based scrubber made up over 30% of our non-fuel O&M expenses at that station. And I'm talking in the range of $25 to $30 million a year associated with scrubbing to remove the SO2 at that site. That made over $2.25 impact to our VOM, which made a big impact to how we dispatched the unit. Didn't used to make a big deal when the unit was regulated, and coal-fired generation was the norm. But in the market today, that's a huge impact, and it really impacts the viability of that site. So we spent years looking at different options to improve the viability of the site. A lot of it centered around, can we improve the process, reduce our usage of the lime, and then looking into limestone conversions. The trick is those limestone conversions are fairly expensive. Your byproduct is essentially the same. We were fortunate enough that we made saleable gypsum, so rather than having to landfill the majority of it, it did get sold, but the value of that byproduct is fairly low compared to the cost of scrub. So in early 2017, I got an unsolicited email from somebody within the JET team, and it kind of hit all the buttons we were looking at. We could we could help you, no cost to you, to improve your operations. Like, perfect, that's what we need. So that's how we undertook this effort. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, it's already been touched, but I think the biggest point I want to make is the JET technology, the ammonia scrubbing technology, this isn't new. There's designs and processes. I've seen papers going back to the late 60s, early 70s. I've witnessed pilot demonstrations in one of First Energy's burger stations in the early 2000s. It's real, it works. You just got to figure out if the application fits your facility the best. So the biggest thing that has been pointed out is the ammonium sulfate, the value of the ammonium sulfate on a density level is really high. And I'll show you a slide here in a minute that really brings it home, but the value is high enough that you could transport it long distances to find a customer and still be profitable compared to gypsum, where if you got to drive it more than so many miles, 50 miles or so, it starts to be too expensive to make it worth doing, and you're better off landfilling. So you're just adding to your expenses to operate. So after looking at that, we decided it was worth doing a site visit. We went to China as well. We brought a team of subject matter experts for FGD systems, engineers, process folks, and as well as an analyst from our company who happened to be a native Chinese speaker, so that kind of helped us a little bit there. We visited the headquarters. Not much talk about that, but it is a very nice, modern, large facility, well-staffed. Their manufacturing center in Nanjing, very nice fabrication facility. I think they had something along the lines of 22 jobs going through the facility at the time. Now those are varying size. We liken to about 2 or 3 the size of our facility. But new equipment, modern welding equipment, looked good. And then we saw 2 facilities. One was a 2 by 450 megawatt equivalent facility that actually made amino acids using MSG manufacturing. And we were really interested in that site because the modules were about the size what we would need to install at our site. We just would need 3 of them instead of 2. And then we got to see this coal to diesel facility that had over 10 200 megawatt units, as well as dozens others throughout the facility. I've never seen a facility that large in my life. It was kind of reassuring to see that it wasn't just the 10 that we looked at, but that's the JET guys, but there was at least another dozen within that facility. Not only were they there, they were in the process of improving those sites. They started off with a lot of Gen 3 modules, as Chairman indicated, and they transitioned several of them to Gen 4s. We were able to witness back-to-back comparisons between Gen 3 and Gen 4. The impacts on the plume. One of the big concerns for our facility is acid aerosols, as Katherine pointed out. The difference in that Gen 4 made it very clear to us that that's a technology that needs to be pursued here. It's exactly what we need. We spend a lot of money at these facilities to mitigate acid aerosols, and it looks like it does it very well. Short story, technology is functional, feasible. It does what you need it to do. The biggest area of concerns we have here, sorry about that. Material handling is going to be one of the biggest issues here, especially at a site that makes 1,300 megawatts worth of this fertilizer. The volume of trucking would be astronomical through our site, but we believe that's one of the reasons our site was really a favorable spot to put it in, is we have river access. This stuff is very capable of being barged, and as I indicated a few moments ago, this product is high enough in value that you could barge it and ship it all around the nation and internationally if needed to find a market to put this stuff. It has that much value to it. You would never do that with gypsum. You would never put it in a barge and send it to another country. It just isn't worth that much. We did have a few other concerns. The ammonia storage. That's a new one. We use ammonia on demand at that facility, so this would be a whole new endeavor. Plus, you're talking volumes of ammonia that are kind of unheard of right now at coal-fired power generation facilities. So there'd be some learning opportunities that have to be done there. The permitting is a bit of an unknown. We just need to know we need to allocate time to do so. And then the quality of the work being done in their shop looked very good. Some of the field installation where they did handmade fiberglass reinforced plastic products left some areas to be desired. But JET's been transitioning over to more stainless materials in their process, and it alleviates a lot of that concern. And then a U.S.-based workforce for installation here would take care of the rest. So we looked at, can we fit it in our site? We're fortunate enough that there's some space in our site. We could build it to the side while the unit's in operation and do a short tie-in outage. It also allows us time to vet the equipment without being time pressured. But here's the real reason why you got to look at this. Lime as a reagent runs about $85 a ton delivered. It's really quite small compared to what the ammonia could be. And these are projected costs out in the future when we thought the project would go in service. So they're not, if you look at today's pricing, it's not quite matched up. Limestone's a good bit cheaper than all of them, but the difference comes in that byproduct, the value. If you look at your reagent cost per ton of SO2 on the third line compared to the byproduct value per ton of SO2 you're produced on the sixth line down, you know, we're paying $85 and some change to scrub a ton of SO2, and we're getting a little over $3.50 back. So we're paying over $82 a ton to pull out SO2. So you're not motivated to scrub any more than your environmentally permit required to do so. Limestone's a little better, but you're still losing $17 for every ton you pull out. It's still a cost to your station. But if you could transition over to ammonia-based scrubber, now you're making almost $300 a ton net. And this is just in the reagent and byproduct comparison, not to mention the values that they bring through the reduced O&M and personnel requirements. So you're talking a difference of, at our station, we were paying $17 million to where you could be bringing in over almost $63 million. So it's significant. The other things is the impact of your variable O&M cost. This directly impacts how we dispatch our units. So I mentioned before we're spending $2.25 on our dispatch price. Well, now you're motivated to scrub more. The more you scrub, the more money you make. At the point where it lowers your VOM, you're dispatched more because of that, because you're more cost effective and you're producing more of the byproducts. It's just a compounding benefit. You also get some benefits if you do have SCRs that you could probably leverage your supply and drop your cost of your SCR operation as well. And the fixed O&M, you know, this process uses, you're basically pumping liquids around, whereas traditional FUDs, they pump a slurry, much thicker, much more abrasive, wears the equipment out a lot faster. This is a very maintenance intensive process in most of the FUD systems in this country. This process using ammonia, the liquids are very easy to move around. Your capital cost to maintain things, your yearly operational costs will drop significantly. Plus, in our case, we're removing a system that's been in service for 25 years and what's pretty harsh service. So you're resetting that. So not only is it lower cost to operate on a year-by-year comparison, you're also comparing yourself to a 25-year-old piece of equipment to a brand new piece of equipment. So that's a big change as well. Then the lower compliance cost was talked about the ELG. This station's estimate for ELG ran on the low side, and it's very optimistic at $35 million, but more realistically up to $75 million. That is not an investment that's going to happen. Not in a merchant generation area. I'm sorry to say it, but most coal-fired generators won't put that kind of money into their plants. They will retire before they invest that. These plants are running so tight on their margins, you're lucky to make $5 to $10 million a year. You barely have enough money to pay to do your turbine overhauls when they come due. So you're basically, your unit's viable up until the next major overhaul. A change like this, at this particular station where you could shift and you go from a $5 to $10 million margin on a good year to 20 to 25, now you can afford to reinvest into the plant, improve its efficiency, which improves all the emission characteristics, reinvest in its longevity, and you're motivated to because you're trying to make more of this stuff. You want your unit to run as often as possible. So you're going to see that reinvestment. Projects that you couldn't financially justify in the past will now be reevaluated and will probably show that it makes sense to do. So in that way, we saw this as an absolute game changer. It was significant enough that I actually transitioned out of my manager director role of the plant to become senior director of environmental engineering for Dynergy. We wanted to focus on that much. And unfortunately, Dynergy ended up getting sold to another company, and all the people in the buy-in kind of fell to the wayside. They lost their engineering capabilities. So it's kind of in stasis right now until Vista gets around to moving on to that. My hope for those people at that plant and for the benefit of the country is that they get through that evaluation and they realize how good of a deal it could be. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. So last but not least, we have John Malloy. John is the plant manager at Cambria Plant in Pennsylvania, which is part of the Northern Star Generation portfolio. I believe folks from the Cambria plant as well went to China, so John's going to share some of his thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is John Malloy. I'm the plant manager of 2 power plants located in west central Pennsylvania, Cambria, Cogen, which I'll talk about, and the Culver facility. Been asked to speak here because, we are looking at the technology. We're fighting for our economic survival, and we also, like Ben, have no capital money to invest, or very little. So this technology came across our laps, and we've been looking at it. Also, I was a boots on the ground, operational type guy that visited China and kicked its tires. So I'll go through that. Who we are, Cambria Cogen, located about 75 miles directly east of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There we go. We are a waste coal-fired CFB power generator. CFB being a circulating fluidized bed. Our net megawatt output, very small compared to 1,300 megawatts, is 87. We like to think of ourselves as an environmental remediation company who happens to generate power. I'll come back to that in a bit here. We must compete in a highly competitive marketplace. We're located smack dab in the middle of PJM and smack dab in the middle of Marcellus shale gas. Not a good place to be right now. We must meet all environmental compliance regulations, therefore a high cost per megawatt. Being only 87 megawatts, our variable costs, we add limestone directly. Unlike having a dry or wet scrubber in the back end, we inject our limestone directly into the boiler. And it can be, on average, I'd say it's 40,000 pounds per hour, 20 ton, injected into the boiler 24/7. So that adds up at that small economies of scale of 87. That adds up to quite a big cost there, $6,750 under mats. The small size of our plant forces us to lower costs and look for alternate revenue streams. Coming back to that third point about being an environmental remediation company, we're kind of proud of this. We burn waste coal. That's waste coal. That's what we burn. It's not, Phil's not here, but this is prior to modern regulations where they dispose of the waste coal from processing plants of present-day coal mines into double line filled sites. This has been left there. Legacy coal been left there for maybe over 100 years. Prior to the modern day regulation, it's sitting there. The owners are extinct. It's just sitting there polluting. Top left picture. Always these piles are located near a stream because the coal mines needed water. So they're always near a stream, potential to pollute that stream. There's an example of acid runoff into a stream from a waste coal site, not ours. But these are selected pictures around Pennsylvania. Bottom left shows a picture of the sheer volume of sizes. The other thing you'll notice is that, back in those days, 60, 70, 80 years ago, coal mining towns always sat next to the coal mines. Therefore, the towns now are sitting next to these pollution piles. Bottom right is an example of a waste coal pile on fire. Not real good sites. Another picture of a sheer size of some of these sites. You see a lot of that. You see there's a stream there. You can see on the right-hand side of that pile that's being polluted. You see red, which is, it's been burning, emitting emissions right there, just sitting there. So not a good site. Before and after waste coal. What is waste coal? It's the waste. In Pennsylvania, it's estimated that there's over 1 billion tons of this waste coal just in Pennsylvania. So right now, I think in the United States, there's 15 waste coal burning facilities, most of them in Pennsylvania. And we're remediating these hazards basically at no cost to the taxpayers. Taxpayers don't have enough money, certainly in Pennsylvania, to pay for over 1 billion tons of waste coal. So here's this is one of our old sites. Left was the waste coal site. The right is the after reclamation, fully seeded, topsoil seeded, and vegetation and wildlife growing. Another one before and after. On the left is the waste coal site. The right is after it's been mined and processed. Oops. And this is one from eastern Pennsylvania. They have anthracite coal there. The left is a mountain of waste coal. On the right is after, and the plant being in the background. Cambria's expectations for this technology. Absolutely, potential to lower our operating costs and improve the plant's economic viability. We wanted to create a co-product or partnership with JET to create a co-product that could be marketed to assist in the economics of our plant. We wanted to provide an alternate approach to environmental compliance relative to air quality, reduce SO2 emissions even beyond the high standards that we have now, reduction in CO2 emissions associated with now with not having to add the limestone into the process for the control of SO2, a reduction in NOx emissions, again, not having the limestone in, there's a catalyst elimination, and reductions in filterable and condensate particulate matter. And we wanted to maintain the high reliability of the Cambria plant. Cambria runs about 97% reliability on average. It's a very well-run plant. So the operational issues we wanted to investigate during the China trip: would the JET technology meet the emissions number it advertised? What was the reliability of the spec-end technology? Would the Cambria plant CFB technology, flue gas, meet JET's requirements? What was the corrosion potential? You know, we had talked about corrosion potential in the absorber and the flue gas ductwork. What was their outage schedule? What was their duration of their outage? Would it meet our needs? You know, we certainly didn't want it to be less reliable. Certainly, we didn't want their outages to be longer than ours. We wanted everything timed together. It takes large volume of bulk anhydrous ammonia. We had concerns about that. What was the fertilizer plant reliability? What was the potential for ash cells? Right now, because we add the limestone calcium into our process, our ash cannot be used, like some PC plants cannot be used as a product in the cement industry. So they get it. PC plants get a revenue stream from selling their ash into the cement industry, which is becoming harder and harder for cement plants to get. So that would help improve our ash cells in the cement industry for another side revenue stream. What was the spare parts availability? You know, if it's being built in China, or most of it being built, if it's designed in China, do we have to get the parts from China? So the observations. JET technology can meet the emissions number they are proposing. Katherine talked about that. Plants that have JET's previous generation technology are upgrading or building new to fourth generation. They wouldn't be doing that. And we asked many questions on that aspect. They wouldn't be doing that if they weren't happy with the technology. They would go elsewhere. Outages can be stretched every 2 years and only be a week in duration. That meets our needs. So that was a check mark. Corrosion issues, the absorber can be minimized with stainless steel linings. That's good. So we're going to have that reliability. Corrosion issues of the ductwork can be minimized with Hastelloy 276 metal. Again, check mark. That'll help us in reliability. The China plants with CFB technology, like ours, are now able to market their ash into the cement industry. They, likewise, couldn't market into the cement industry, but now can. So that's exactly parallels what we're looking for. The high volumes of anhydrous ammonia have not been a concern. They and the plants have designed multiple tanks to transfer back and forth if one tank has an issue. So a little bit of extra capacity and redundancy there. And many of the parts of this project, correct me if I'm wrong here, Peter, but many of these parts will be sourced in the U.S., alleviating concerns of availability. So it was a very worthwhile trip. We kicked the tires. Deborah, Gary's back, and I. And I can say from my perspective, we were pleased.
Okay, so our next presenter is Mr. Fareed Salim, the CEO of JNG Middle East, and he's going to be talking about the applications of JET's technology in the oil and gas and agricultural development and environmental protection industries in the Middle East.
Good morning. I guess I'm standing between you and lunch now, so which is maybe Neil will do that. I will try to be short since a lot of the points actually has been covered by several of the speakers who preceded me. So I'm going to skip through probably some of the technology sides. But I'll start maybe with the story of meeting the chairman, which happened about a year ago. And one of the things that struck me quickly, having been associated during the last part of my career with ConocoPhillips in one of the largest sour gas projects in the world, actually. I know I'm speaking to a different audience here, but this is a facility that basically processes gas which has about 25% H2S. It's hard to imagine. So when we came across that project, the more we looked at it, I said, this is a sulfur project. This is not a gas project, which is reality. So out of the $10 billion investment, I would say 80% of that was really to economically removing sulfur. So one of the things that occurred to me, when I met the chairman and we started talking about this technology, I wish I met him 10 years ago. So that would have changed probably my life in many ways, yeah. But having said this, I think clearly this is a technology that has significant benefits to the oil and gas industry. And rather than go through maybe all of the slides here, I said I'm going to try and skip. Do we have the presentation here? Okay. I'm going to skip through the technology sides and maybe just describe quickly for some of you who are not familiar with the application or potential application of this technology. So, many of the gas streams and basically crude, whether it's being used in refineries, have clearly sulfur. And somehow you're going to have to remove that sulfur. Traditionally in gas, you have basically a Klaus which removes practically 99% if you go to super Klaus percent of the sulfur. To meet the emissions we are talking about, you will have to install what we call a tail gas treatment, which is an amine-based process, which is very expensive both in terms of CapEx and OpEx. Fundamentally, this technology replaces this tail gas treatment. More important, since you are producing here a value-added product, and I think for people who, I guess, come from an emission background, I think when you think of these projects, you think of cost. So one of the first thing I've been, as I'm talking to people, in the industry is we're not talking costs here. We're talking, making money. So that's a fundamental, I would call, cultural shift, in terms of how we approach these projects. So in reality, now, we're beginning to look at, applying this technology in, I would call it a very innovative way, meaning, simplifying, the sulfur recovery process, because now we don't have to go to super Klaus. Fundamentally, we want to maximize, this value-added product, the ammonium sulfate, and we want basically to have more, if you want to call it emissions, in this particular case, to produce more value, because that enhances the economics of these projects. So now I think, talking to clearly, and we started with the largest company in the business, which is Aramco, Saudi Aramco, who has significant challenges, with emissions, especially given the recent mandated requirements by the new Crown Prince. And they have to spend basically, I'm not exaggerating, tens of billions of dollars to meet these emissions requirements. So across all of their gas processing facilities and refineries. So the value proposition, for a company like Saudi Aramco is huge. And they clearly have been looking around the globe, for solutions for this. And every time, it's just how much is going to cost me less. So when we started talking to them about, we are ready to do this, basically, and you don't have to invest anything, they started listening clearly. And so this is too good to be true, and they wanted to do their own due diligence and visit, some of the sites. So I'm going to skip through, as I said, the technical piece here and all of the references, since you have seen this, and really talk about this Saudi Aramco, I call it first project, which we are talking about, which involves 3 of their gas, these are large facilities, gas processing facilities, and the scheme we have developed, and we are actively engaged now in commercial discussions with them, involve basically us building, the whole, what we call complex, including the ammonia, the compound fertilizer, and clearly the absorbers. This is an investment of around 2 to 2.5 billion. So our best estimate right now is about 2.3 billion. dollars to do, these 3 gas plants plus 1 small refinery unit. Fundamentally, we would become through this venture a large fertilizer player. We would produce about 3 million tons of compound fertilizer, which is really using urea and our ammonium sulfate plus other products to produce this higher value added product. Clearly, this is a new, the way at least Saudi and Aramco is looking at this, this creates a new business basically within the kingdom, not only creating jobs. Okay, so now we're transforming this emission, I would call it a cost question, to a new venture, which is really adding value in a broader sense within the kingdom. So the gas plants, and this is just a quick summary here of what the scope of this project involves, and our which is incorporated in our proposal to them. As I said, it involves 3 of their largest gas processing facilities and 1 large refinery. But so we have several clearly units here, as I said, and 3 large, I call it world-scale ammonia plants, basically, which are built to serve the requirements in this particular case. Yeah. Now, going back to ADNOC, where, as I cited, the project I was personally involved in developing, which is one of the largest sour gas projects in the world, which is the Shah sour gas. We looked at this clearly because there we did install the stale gas treatment unit, and to meet the the global standard for emissions, unlike several of ADNOC's facilities, which does not have stale gas treatment units, gas processing facilities. So when we did basically the study for them, it became obvious to them this is not a cost equation again. This is about making money. And now we've expanded the scope of the study to include all of their gas processing facilities and a new sour gas development. For some of you who might not are from the industry, Abu Dhabi has one of the largest sour gas reserves in the world. So to meet their future gas requirements, so this is more of a strategic technology for Abu Dhabi given the requirements of the country. So this would be a strong enabler if they are able to reduce the cost of developing these sour gas reserves, because as I said earlier, when you look at a project like Shah, I mean, 80% of your cost is really associated with removing sulfur. So fundamentally, in the case of Shah, that was affordable because the gas was liquid rich, so we could afford to do this. But many of the other reserves which they have are not as liquid rich, and clearly technology here like ours plays a big role in enabling the development of these reserves. This is again, putting this into perspective, the scheme we are in discussion right now with ADNOC on basically, and ADNOC is in the fertilizer business, unlike Saudi Aramco. It would be to really produce almost 5 million tons of ammonium sulfate if you combine all of their facilities. So this would be a much bigger even venture compared to the one with Saudi Aramco. Now the biggest question I think, which comes, I think, can you move that much product into the marketplace? And I think this is where we began to look at clearly some ideas in terms of how we can maximize value and become better at, a better understanding at least of the, I would say, the agriculture business and the fertilizer business in general. So myself, I had to lean on my son, who is here, I guess, who is a new Texas A&M graduate in agriculture, at least to pick his brain and ask him to do some work for me. And I think fundamentally, I think we as an industry, both the oil and gas and power, I think through whether policy or self-initiatives, we have cut significantly the amount of sulfur we bring back to the earth, So So in reality, he was telling me we need sulfur. So a lot of the sulfur we are taking out needs to be brought back to the ground to really make sure that we have enough sulfur to maintain the productivity and of basically agriculture industry. So that is another fact, and I think the ability to bring back, I call it the sulfur compounded fertilizers, into the marketplace as people begin to use them and understand the value. And as the chairman cited, at least his own personal experience in China, I think they will begin to realize the value we bring in the broader sense and I would call it this holistic sustainable solution to the planet by offering this technology. I thought we have a speaker later on to speak about the agriculture, but I wanted to share at least some data. This is from Green Markets on at least ammonium sulfate. Some of you might be familiar with this report and the data from it. But just ammonium sulfate, I mean, even with these two projects which I described, which are very large projects, we would represent, roughly about 5 to 10% of the total market. So our ability being, one of the lowest cost producers of this product, to move this product into the global market is not an issue. Now, when we begin to think of the broader fertilizer market, which is about 600 million tons a year, I think, we are still, talking about a tiny drop, in that bigger market, which is growing globally. Clearly, the price, difference between North America and other markets is fundamentally driven, I would say, by some, clearly the type of crops which you grow and the soil which you are dealing with, based on what I learned, at least myself here. So I think there is a big market, at least in North America, for ammonium sulfate. And clearly, globally, I mean, I believe the need for sulfur-based compound fertilizers, I believe, is growing very fast and will continue to grow. So I think from a market fundamental point of view, we feel fairly confident that the products which we are producing and we will continue to produce, especially as you begin to unlock some of the opportunities in the oil and gas industries, which tend to be much, much larger, as I described, than the opportunities. We have to look at these holistic solutions and deliver, what I call to our customers a total solution to basically allow us to deliver value to them and to other clients. And I feel personally, I'm sure you've seen enough data right now to say that there is enough value here for everyone. And I think the challenge is more, in my mind, is a cultural challenge right now, is to shift people thinking that emissions is a good thing. We are happy to take your emissions. We're happy to make money. Thank you.
You're not the one that stands between them and lunch. The next speaker is. So I would like to, it's my honor to introduce Neil Bush, who is a board member of the Bilateral Chamber, and I'm so pleased that he was able to join us, and he's going to give closing remarks, and then we will adjourn to lunch.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all the speakers that have spoken before me and the experts. I feel like I've learned an awful lot today. I thought I knew about the JET technology, but to hear firsthand assessments from those that have been to China has been very reassuring. So thank you all for coming. I want to thank everyone else for participating in this conference. I had a long set of comments prepared, but I'm going to keep them much shorter than my preparation. I traveled to China frequently. I share my father's core belief that the U.S.-China relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. I believe, as my father does, that human challenges have to be met in collaborations with other countries. And I'm deeply honored to be invited to be of assistance to Chairman Xu, who I have met quite a while ago. And I've come to respect as an honorable, dedicated, passionate person who cares deeply about our planet and about the business that he's building. So it's an honor to work with you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard a lot today about the critical need for infrastructure as coal-fired power plants are becoming decommissioned or aging out. We've understand that the electrical power generation is kind of at the center of the infrastructure discussion in the United States, and it's one that directly relates to our national security interests. We've heard today about JET's technology, the tried and true nature of the technology, and ironically, this technology has been pushed to extremes in terms of capturing emissions because of high standards that are established in the Chinese market. And ironically, it's probably the implementation of this technology is going to be more implemented with more integrity in the United States than in China. So we need to do everything we can to help the chairman, who cares deeply about our environment and his environment, but to implement the technology here in the U.S. to see it realize its fullest benefits. There have been a slew of benefits that have been talked about. The fact that the JET technology doesn't emit water or solid waste, that the ammonia-based solution exceeds environmental standards, that the byproduct ammonium sulfate is badly needed for our agricultural industry, that JET will pay for the installation of this technology in the plants, that installing JET's technology will create jobs for the construction, jobs for coal miners, hopefully even increase the jobs for coal miners in Illinois. Clearly, deploying the JET technology helps address critical infrastructure and security needs in the United States. And as Rick so beautifully put it, this clearly aligns with an America First agenda. The JET team understands that there are challenges in deploying its technology. There are regulatory challenges, there are environmental challenges, big hoops that have to jump through. And in JET's case, they have the additional challenge of going through a CFIUS process. Given that this is a win-win scenario, it is my hope that everyone in this room will play an active and constructive role in helping JET with the deployment of the technology here in the United States. I want to thank you again for coming. We have lunch, a restroom break, we have all kinds of things, and there will be plenty of opportunity to chat with and have discussions with the chairman and the JET team. So thank you all very, very much, and thank Aida for putting together such a wonderful program. Thank you all very much.